Mr. President, I am absolutely shocked that FEMA has announced that on Wednesday it will stop distributing food and water to Puerto Rico. Cutting this aid to the people of Puerto Rico, almost a third of them who still do not have electricity, it's unconscionable and it's a travesty. I urge the administration to reverse this disastrous decision immediately and to continue providing the people of Puerto Rico with the help that they need as they are trying to recover from two disastrous hurricanes. This senator has been on the floor over and over again saying the needs, the desperate needs. But here I am again to remind our colleagues, Puerto Ricans are American citizens. They're just like the people of any state, including the states of Kentucky and of Texas and of Wyoming and so many of the other states where it might be forgotten. They are our fellow countrymen, and they deserve the same care and protection that we would provide any other citizens in time of need. They have supplied some of the greatest warriors of our United States military in World War I, World War II, Korea, and on up to the present. If the people of any other state were being neglected like the people of Puerto Rico have been in the wake of this storm, there would be an absolute outrage in this Senate. The people of Puerto Rico need help, but they're not the only ones. Millions of people were affected by the storms that hit last year. My state of Florida, Texas, of course, the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, and now the wildfires in California. And right now, many of them are desperately waiting to act on a disaster supplemental package to help them recover. We're trying to pass that, and it keeps getting shuffled off to the future. We're trying to add to that supplemental the necessary disaster aid that is needed in agriculture, and particularly the citrus industry in Florida. We're trying to add to that the additional financial assistance that is needed in Puerto Rico. So I hope our colleagues in the Senate will understand the urgency of this matter. We can't keep pushing this off down into the future. The need to act is now. Mr. President, I just want to say in addition that in Florida, people are struggling. We should not neglect what is happening on the mainland. It's true in Texas, it's true in California, it's true in Florida, and it's true in the islands. The storms destroyed homes and damaged apartments all around Florida. But we haven't seen any real attempt to address the housing needs of hurricane victims in the state. And by the way, including those coming to Florida from Puerto Rico. Florida got about $600 million out of the $7.4 billion that was made available in the CDBG DR in the September supplemental. What percentage is that of $7.4 billion? It's well less than 10%. It defies comprehension. Florida was one of the places hardest hit last year. The hurricane, Irma, it virtually covered up the entire peninsula of Florida. It wreaked havoc all across the state. And add to that the after effects of Hurricane Maria, with thousands fleeing Puerto Rico to Florida. And we've got a real situation, a housing crisis on our hands. $600 million to help those left bare by two of the most devastating storms to hit the country in decades. That's a drop in the bucket. We should be able to get people the help they need in the time they need it. And now is required. Not a year later, not 6 months later, now. Schools in Florida have been stretched thin, now having enrolled nearly 12,000 students who evacuated Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Every child has a right to a quality education, but the school systems can't do it on their own, not after a natural disaster. Dealing with such a large influx of students in a short period requires extra resources. Now, the House has passed a package that includes $2.9 billion for education funding. We desperately need it. But schools and students need this aid now. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. Their education can't wait. You can't keep relying on teachers to go out and get the extra supplies for them. And I mentioned our citrus growers. You know, the industry is already devastated with a bacteria called greening that when it gets into the phloem or the sap of the tree, it kills the tree in 5 years. We're not going to have a citrus industry if we can't find the cure for that. But then on top of that, with additional extra care of the groves, they were able to nurture back a crop. And here's all this crop of oranges and grapefruit on the trees, and along comes Irma. And in some groves, not only was 100% of the crop blown off the trees, but trees were uprooted. That's why we desperately need the money to clean up and replant. Farmers in Florida suffered at least $2.5 billion in losses when Hurricane Irma tore through the state, and that includes a lot of our citrus. Citrus alone experienced $760 million in losses. That's on top of the difficulties that they are having already with the bacteria. The USDA is only estimating Florida growers will harvest 46 million boxes this season. Get this, 46 million this season. 10 years ago, it was 203 million boxes harvested of citrus. A decade before that, it was 244 million boxes of oranges. For months, our farmers have been told to wait their turn. Some of them are going bankrupt. They've waited long enough. They need the help now. We just have to act on this disaster bill. And additionally, while it's been over 100 days since Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, over 30% of the island remains without power. Parts of the island still lack running water. Some people have running water still, but they can't drink it. They have to boil it. When I was there in the little mountain town of Utuado, the source of water about 2 weeks after the hurricane, with the roads cut off, the only source of outside help was by helicopter. The running water that they had was from a pipe that was coming out of the mountain water draining down. I don't want to mince words here. We have a full-blown humanitarian crisis in Puerto Rico right now. My colleague, Marco Rubio from Florida, has been there also, and he's here to testify to the same thing. As a result, recent estimates suggest over 300,000 Puerto Ricans may have moved to Florida. Some are fortunate enough to move in with relatives, but others are living in motels that line the I-4 corridor. Some are living out of their cars. This is absolutely heartbreaking. How can we fail fellow American citizens like this? And yet, given the current situation, the administration thinks now, today, that it's the appropriate time to cut off food and water for the people of Puerto Rico. There's no common sense here. FEMA needs to continue to provide food and water to the island until, at very least, all of the island has access to potable water and electricity. They are suffering, and while the administration is trying to abandon the responsibility of the U.S. to Puerto Rico, the House aid package shortchanges recovery efforts on the island. We must enhance it in the Senate package. For instance, it fails to address the current Medicaid crisis, just a month away. If nothing is done, Puerto Rico's Medicaid program is going to run out of money. Congress must act. Otherwise, over 1 million U.S. citizens will be denied health care coverage when they need it the most. It's been over a month since the House passed the disaster bill. We haven't seen any action. The longer we wait, the more people suffer. It's clear the government is not working the way it should. We need to turn a corner, and it needs to start with this disaster bill being bumped up in the Senate and then quickly passed. I beg our colleagues, Senator Marco Rubio joins me. Let's take up this bill. Let's fix the deficiencies, and let's pass it immediately. Mr. President, I yield the floor.